Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're going to paint gray around the eyes clasp. So we're gonna put a little bit of gray paint in here. Grab the paintbrush and get started. Make sure I'm holding it right. Make sure to get in all the creases. This is what it looks like so far. You might have to do a second layer of the gray because this isn't quite dry, and because the clay is not quite dry, the gray doesn't want to look as dark, so you could do a second layer or a second coat for that. Or you could just make your coat thick. And this 30-ounce cup is very heavy and I have issues with my wrists already, so kind of have to lean it as much as possible. Hope you guys can still see that I'm painting. Okay, so here's my clasp. I'll probably go over that a second time. So I'm just gonna set that aside and then get my brush in the water. And I use this water brush cleaner from the dollar store. It's amazing. Great for children, great for us artisans. Okay. So I'm gonna just move over to the brown to do my eye. And again, I am using the Apple Barrel Melted Chocolate. 50 cents at Walmart right now, if you are in Vermont like me. Your state may vary. Alright, so we're going to do the scarring. And what I'm doing is I'm just getting that base coat down of all of these, and then I'm going to come in with black and I'm going to do some detail work with the black. Right now it's just getting the main colors down. A little bit of clay coming off there. So anywhere before that you got a little bit of clay, that's okay, because the color, as you're painting, you'll see like right here, there's a little bit of like dry clay from where I was pressing it down earlier. You can just hit that spot with the brown because it's the same brown that I used originally for the paper towel as I was putting it on. So that's okay. And then we're gonna come in with a little bit of a darker color after. This is just the base coat for that particular scarring. And it's gonna look a little camouflage. Just like the book. Now, my particular scarring is not quite dry. I just thought I would give it like an initial coat, let it finish drying, put on the second coat. and then let it dry a couple more days. Alright, so you can see up close, the brown's on here, and it merges really well with the color of the cup itself. It's a little bit lighter, or at least it looks a little bit lighter, and that's because of the yellow clay color. But like I said, we'll be doing some details in here. Also, we could be adding a second coat of this after it's fully dried. Right now it's sort of acting like, the paint is acting like water, where it's smoothing out everything, but it's also kind of getting the stuff a little bit wet. We're just finishing this up. And then, like I said, right here you can see where there was some spaces that I was working on. You can also see where I hit the gray. So I'm going to hit that with a little bit of brown too. So where I was doing the gray detail just now, I can hit that with a little bit of brown and take care of that. So it just looks cleaner. Up and around the paint. So right here you can see like a spot. That's all dry clay from before. And you just hit that with a little bit of paint as you're doing the scarring. Totally takes that away. No problem at all. No big deal for us crafters. So just head on in with this. Get that little detail. Make sure I get the rest of this scar. And it looks a little leathery, which is great, because that's exactly what we want to go for. Make sure we get the sides. We want all the details taken in. The middle is not as much of a big deal as far as getting like right into the middle of the crease of the scar, because I'm going to go in with black, and I'm actually going to put the black in the creases. So it's okay if I'm just doing the brown on the outside, because it's going to be there darker later. I just want to get the main brown base coat. I'd say you're doing a wonderful job. Looking good. Looking good, people, looking good. Tutorials are the best, aren't they? I love them. And I thought, there's only one tutorial out there, I think, for this cup, so I thought, you know, if I'm making it already, might as well try to help you. Even though I was gonna do it from the beginning, and then I started working on it because I got all excited and forgot to record my first couple steps. But, I mean, it's pretty easy. I explained it, self-explanatory, basically. It is very time consuming. I think it was probably 2 hours total as far as like getting the first I started with Mod Podge, so deciding I didn't like the Mod Podge and moving over to the tacky glue that I ended up using, that made things so much faster. But I think it was 2 hours total for me, because I realized the Mod Podge was drying before I could get the paper towel on, and then I was wasting a lot of it putting it over the top of it, trying to get it smooth. So yeah, tacky glue, people, tacky glue. So tacky glue saved my life. But it did take a long time to kind of put it on the cup, make sure it was like make sure it's a thin coat when you first put the paper towel on. You don't want to soak it underneath too much, because I found that it really takes a long time to dry if you do that. So like a thin coat of like the tack it over and over, or the tacky glue, Just a thin coat, just enough to get that paper towel to stick onto the cup, and then I put a nice thick layer of tacky glue over the top of the paper towel, and then let it dry overnight. But I think I soaked mine pretty good because I put a lot of tacky glue underneath and then a lot of it on top. So just so you know not to make the same mistake. Thin coat at first. Top coat should be a little bit heavier because you want to seal the whole front of the paper towel before you do anything else with it. Make sure that there's no moisture getting in there when we go to paint or add the next layers. So this is looking pretty good. Just gonna do the edges, get my scar in there. Let it dry for a minute or two. Make sure I look it over. Make sure that everything's good on the edges, because the edges are what you're gonna see in the final. So you're gonna come along, look at the scar's edges. You can see a little bit of the clay color here. So you're just gonna go along the edge on the outside rim. Just make sure that you got it all brown. Get that color in there. It's kind of like a canvas. You know, you're so excited, you painted the canvas, you got this beautiful sunset happening, you're all done with it, you're so excited. You go, you give it to someone, and they open it up, and the side of the canvas is white on the other side, and you're like, oh, they forgot to paint the side of the canvas, and it's all over at that point. Alright, so I'm just going to look it over, spin it for a minute, make sure that all of my details are brown, and then I've gotten all the sides that I need to. I'd say I do. So I'm going to give that a second. So here's what it looks like now. So it's got a good brown on it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set my paintbrush down. I'm going to take the my pick, actually my weeder pick, and I'm going to come across the scarring before it's completely dry, and I'm going to actually make the little lines. You can use the toothpick for this if you don't have the weeder tool. I'm not sure what I do with my toothpick, so I'm just going to wing it with this thing. So I'm just going to put a little bit down because I'm going to want to know where I'm going to put my paint. So I'm just going to mark it in a couple of spots. I'm thinking, because I just broke off a couple pieces of clay, because just because it's drying enough, I'm going to use the toothpick. But this is something that I will try to backtrack, and when we are done with this, before it dries, have you guys do this when it's still wet. You can see it here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a lighter cream color or something like that. That's where I'm going to put in the little scarring creases. So it looks like the little leather bound, just like in the movie. But as you can see in a couple places, it's dry, so the clay is sort of cracking. So I should have done this before. Nothing that can't be saved. If for some reason you get to this and oops, you forgot to do it, that's okay, because all you have to do is paint the lines on there. I mean, you don't have to have the divots in. I just think it makes it look better. All right, I have one more to do, and it's this long one right here. Oh, I broke my toothpick. That's how you know things drying like it's supposed to. Oh, muffin. Okay, next toothpick. Don't mind me. All right. Oh my cow! It's just not working out there. All right, down with the tip. All right, we're gonna spin this bad boy. Try to get this done quickly. There we go. At least you know it's drying. It's doing its job. It's doing what it's supposed to do, people. All right, so here we go. You can see that the scarring's on there. He's looking pretty good. Now we're gonna do the eye with the brown. Oh my. That's how you break a toothpick. All right. So take the brown. We're going to paint our little eyeball. I'm excited for the eyeball. I've been waiting to paint him. I was giving him a little bit more time to dry up, but I think it's pretty dry. If it's cracking toothpicks, it's dry. All right, I'm just gonna get underneath because I have him in his 3D style. He's popped up out of here. So I wanna make sure that I got everything on here. I'm gonna add the brown. Oh, he looks amazing. Amazingly creepy, amazingly scary. I don't know. Amazingly cool. I don't know that I'd want this in my cupboard. Open it up to get a coffee and there he is. It's good for this season. Oh, monkey. You know what I did? Guess what? This is what happens when people make mistakes. The eye itself, I painted brown, and it should have been white. So, I'm gonna try to clean that up just a little bit, but I'm sure it's not all gonna come off. All right. What I'm going to do is paint white over that because that was my mistake. The brown should be the eyelids. This is why we do these things. So I'm going to finish up with the brown first. And then decide where I want the white to go on his eye. I'm just painting down underneath where the details are, just getting that brown again, just because there was a little bit of gray from earlier. So you want the eyelids, you don't want the eyeball. You want to make sure the eyeball is actually still white or a cream color. So I'm just going to double up the eyelid. Making sure I got underneath really well, which I did. Perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a little bit of white acrylic paint. Let's stand up for that. So give me just a moment. All right. And I'm going to add a little bit of white into my tray. And I will use this paintbrush. I got lots of these laying around, can you tell? I don't want it too white, just a little bit white. So I'm going to take it, mix it just a little bit. If you do like a mix with the brown just a little bit, it'll give it that cream color that the original had. That's what we want. A little bit more white. more detail to the eyelid. Sorry about that. So you can see the eye is once again white. And then I can go back in with the brown just a little bit. And I'm using a very thin white paintbrush right now because I want to make sure the white is all around the eye. And we're going to shine up that eye just a little bit. And that's okay because we'll use a Q-tip before the end just to make sure that this is all cleaned up. So I'm going to go back in with the other paintbrush just for a minute, and I'm going to, anywhere that was white that I don't want white but brown, I'm going to just fix that. And that is right here. Just defining the eyelid just a little bit. Okay, so here's my eye again. So you got the white, you got the eyelid. It sticks out there at the bottom. Just adding a second coat on there just to darken it up. Alright, here's our eye. So now I'm just going to take a moment and I'm going to grab a Q-tip and then we're going to just wipe off excuse me, the paint that was here. You shouldn't need to wipe the Q-tip with anything. You should just be able to wipe it off because the paint is not fully dried yet. If you need to add something, maybe a little rubbing alcohol, maybe a little water, I wouldn't really use acetone because it would take up way too much. So I am just rubbing. It is dry, but it is moving because the eyeball is a marble. So it should be able to wipe off any excess. All right. I have this one spot that I'm going to use my fingernail for because it didn't like me. But like I said, you can take a little bit of, alcohol spray. I'm actually allergic to alcohol, so I don't put a whole lot on there. And then just wipe off the top. Make sure it's all shiny. Alrighty. So that one's good. So we've got the white eye, we've got brown eyelids now, we've got the clasp done here, and then we've got the scarring. So the next step is to paint the black in here. So we're gonna shake this up, get my paintbrushes in the water where they need to go, and add a little bit of black. And we're gonna use, once again, that really thin, tiny brush. So I'm gonna use this blue one here. You can see it's very, very thin. This came in a pack at the dollar store, actually, because you know how much I love my dollar store. Okay, for us cheapies. They have so many good supplies though, like for real. There's so much stuff that you can get from there that's great. So I thank them. It's all right. So I'm gonna go in with the black. You can also use a little bit of white to lighten it up if you don't quite want that much, or you can add a little bit of black to the brown and make your brown just a little bit darker. So I'm gonna go in here first. My black is a really dark black. This one is Craft Smart black, also picked up from, I think, Walmart in the craft section. But this is really, really dark, so I might actually use a little bit of my black and my brown and mix it into another one of my trays just to get it a little bit darker. So we're gonna scoop and we're gonna stir. Scoop and stir, baby. There we go, perfect. So I've got this nice dark brown color now, and that should be able to go a little bit better in here. All right, so I'm gonna take the black and I'm going to go into my crevices of my scarring. Can you see the difference? So here's the black right on this one. And I'm gonna do that all the way around. Maybe I'll start up here. And that one's just gonna give it a little bit more depth inside. We're gonna go nice and gentle so I don't show clay later. All right. I don't know if you guys can see this. I'm trying to paint towards you. I don't do very many tutorials, and I apologize for that. I just thought this one was really fun. Super time consuming, but so fun for the spooky season. So we're gonna just run the black in here, make sure you get it right where you want. Cover up those areas. Trying to get it so you guys can see the light too. I don't have the best lighting in my workshop. I have lots of massive pegboards above my head, so there was no room for a light. Bad planning on my part. So I'm just coming down, like I said, bringing it down, bringing the black down into the crease. So when you're looking at it, it's giving it a little bit of color. A little bit of that dark brown works too, if you don't want to go with the black. If it seems like it's just too dark, a little bit too much for you, you can come in with the dark brown. We're going to be doing some details with the dark brown also. It doesn't need to be too thick. Just drag it down enough to where you're seeing it in the seam. And be careful when you're turning your cup that you're holding it the right way, because you don't want to accidentally press something or hit it where, you know, I'm like holding it sort of off the corner. So I don't want to move my eye or accidentally hit my eye to the point where like I could nick something or accidentally break it off. Should be fully adhered. I did think about using like a E6000 to maybe glue the clay on, but honestly when you start working with it, you can tell it just doesn't come off. I tried to remove it a couple of times so I could cut it smaller to the eye, so that it was a little bit smaller on the cup, and I will tell you right now, it was kind of hard to get it off. So I'm pretty sure it's gonna stay. And then once the epoxy's on, everything will be sealed anyway. We put enough layers of Mod Podge on this that it should also seal pretty well. I mean, this thing, a lot of people just use Mod Podge and they don't even use the epoxy for sealant. For this particular thing, I epoxy everything. It's just my business, the way I do things. So I'm just gonna make a light groove on that one. And then I'm sort of mixing this black with the brown just to cover the clay pieces that didn't get colored. That way I have that dark in there, but it's also coloring everything in. You can always add more later, but you can never take it off if it's too much. So less is more. You can always look at it and say, that side needs a little bit more. But you can't be like, oh, that's horrible, I would like to cover that, because you will not be able to do that later. So we're just getting the creases in here. I'm almost done with this scar right here. And you can see where the grooves are for the scars. And once again, I'll put the photos below for what the customer actually asked for, so that you can sort of compare mine to theirs. At this point, I would say I took a lot of liberties and I did my own thing. So it probably doesn't look, I mean, it looks inspirational, but I wouldn't say it looks just like that one. I'd say it's sort of my own creation at this point. But you could see, I did my best. I do keep my customers apprised the entire time, so my customer already has a picture of my current progress, and I let them know how many days it's going to be in between everything I do, so that they know when they can get it in the end. Alrighty. I think this is my last scar. And then I'm going to take this dark brown. I'm going to sort of put a little bit more veining within my cup. I mean, I really, really want it to look leathery. What do you guys think? So I'm thinking, as far as like the cream color or the lighter color that they put on their scar stitch, I'm thinking I might just stick with the lighter brown at this point, or the darker brown just mixed in, because I feel like just letting it look nice like that, you don't need too much. I don't feel like you really need a white, which is really gonna stick off the book. Might make it pop, but it might also make it look eh. So like, what do you guys think of that one? That's what I think I'm gonna do. So the stitches are very visible, because you're definitely using it all the way up the same way. So I think that's how I'm gonna do this. I'm changing it right now as I'm talking to you guys. Isn't that awesome? That is creative liberties right there. So yeah, I think I'm gonna stick with this. I like it better. We don't need lighter colors. And I can also make it bigger if I wanted to. I could kind of make it go off the whole area if I feel like it. I think it looks pretty good. You don't need massive stitches. just enough to show that it's there, I feel. So yeah, there we go. I really do, I like it. We're gonna stick with it. And I'm using a dark blue, I'm sorry, dark brown, excuse me, and the black sort of mixed as I go. So I'm just doing a touch of both within the tray and then moving forward with it. It makes it like a different color than the actual midline of this scar. So it's just a little bit different, but still pronounced in a lot of ways. So, cup so far. And I don't want to forget to add a little bit more inside here, because I definitely want this to be pronounced in black, because this is the keyhole. All right, so I've got one more stitch here on the bottom. And then we've got, I think, one more row, maybe two, to do down below. And it is coming along. Just so you guys know, this is my first live like YouTube thing, so be gentle when you judge me. Be gentle, okay? I'm gonna try to piece these videos together and do the best I can, but you know, I'm learning. We're all learning. Most of what I do is live on my YouTube channels and or on my Facebook page, and it's nothing like this. It's usually like a I'm going to show you how to, you know, do a tack it method tonight, or hey, I'm making this cup for this person and I'm just going to show you what I'm doing so they can watch me make their cup, because that's fun. And I'm going to do one more up here, even though I didn't actually indent that area. So I'm just going to take a look at my cup. I'm going to spin it slowly. I'm actually going to shut off one of these lights. Sorry about that. It's probably better for you, so you can see it as my sun's going down early here in Vermont. Winter is upon us. So I'm going to spin it. I'm going to make sure that there are not any clay viewings. So anywhere that I see that might still have like a clay look to it, I'm just going to take that and fill it with my brush as well as I can. I have a very, very tiny thin brush, and it's just going to fill that space and those creases as much as I can. And that's why you pull away. So as I'm pressing down, you sort of pull it away so that the indent is there, but that the crease itself is wider. Like it pulls it back, so it makes it more wide, so that it makes it easier when you go to paint it, because then it's all exposed and easier than like a small crease that you're trying to get your paintbrush in there. That just doesn't work out. So I'm just double checking, I'm spinning it, I'm making sure that all of my scar creases have the black in the middle. And this was, like I said, the straight up black from Craft Smart. And then I mixed the black and the brown to do the stitching, just so that it was a different shade. And that was my melted chocolate from the apple barrel. And then I'm just making sure that all of my stitches were put in and done. And I can see there's actually one missing up here. So this is why we spin, we double check everything, make sure it's all there. So I do have an indent that did not have a line. I have a little piece of clay showing there, so I'm just gonna cover that up. All right, so here we are. Spell book. The scarring is all done. It is all put on here. This is still set to dry. The last thing that I have to do is the dots. So around my clasp, I'm going to fill the dots. And I'm going to be using this black, mostly black, in here, just because it's gonna stand out more. So we're gonna take the black on my small paintbrush and we're just gonna fill the dots. Make sure to look from all angles because you don't know, if I'm facing it towards you, I'm not gonna see the top of it. So I wanna make sure that the whole thing is full. A little bit around. Try to keep them as round as possible. Like I said, you can use all the tools that you have around you. Some people have every tool they need for sculpting and crafting. I just have the tools that are necessary for what I do on a normal basis. This was a special order, something that I don't normally do, but I was happy to give it a shot. So here we go, sink or swim together on YouTube, so you can laugh at me as we go along. Like, you know, painting an eyeball brown. That happens when we're doing things for the first time. Alrighty, I need a little bit more black for that one. Alright, one more dot over here. Yeah, what do you guys think? This looks pretty good. Now I will say, looking at it from my perspective, not on the screen, I'm seeing that you can kind of see through the gray here. So I definitely want to put a second coat of gray over this. I think it's dried enough that I can do that now. So I'm going to do that while I am with you. But I think the rest of it looks pretty good. It's all leathery. The paper towel held up really, really well. The Mod Podge dried really nicely. And then all you have to do is just keep going, plug it away. So I'm going to take my paintbrush out of my brush cup, dry it off real quick on the paper towel. All right, and then we're going to go back to gray. Still have some in my tray. I actually poured a lot. I shouldn't have done that. All right, so I'm going to try to hold this the best I can. And we're going to go in for a second shot. Like I said, any gray that you get on the cup itself is fine because you can go around it with the brown. It's going to cover that up. It's not going to be a big deal. So don't stress. Oh my gosh, I painted the bottom. Oh my gosh, I got it all messed up. It's okay. This is my first time too, you know. All right. So we're just going to make this a little bit darker. And I think it looks better, a lot better than the first layer. Just gonna get around the detail. Everything I see first and then come back around and do the corners. And of course, I just did black dots. So if you cover it with the gray, again, just go back over it with the black after the gray has dried. Or you could be smart and you can put the gray on a second coat and then put the dots in, because that's what I would have done if I thought about it. All right, got a nice layer of gray on here now. And I mean, you could add a little bit here and there of like brown streaks in the gray. It might like make it feel a little bit older. I just personally, I'm just gonna keep it gray. Looks fine to me, like an old clasp. And I can get around my circles. So you can definitely see a difference between the nice dark one and then one that's sort of see-through on the side. Okay. Well, we're almost done here. And then after this, I am going to let this dry fully until the clay is completely dry. Then we're going to put one more layer of Mod Podge over the whole thing. I feel this particular activity requires a lot of Mod Podge, so make sure you have a good sized jar. Don't be like me and have the tiny little jar, because you might have to go through one or two of those for this. Or you could be like me and use tacky glue, because that worked, I will tell you, amazingly better. And it's not as much of a waste. And it's cheaper because you get it at the dollar store. Alrighty. One more little area and we are finished with this. It's important when you are doing a paint job like this that you take a step back when you're done. Take a look at all of the work. Make sure that you're happy with it. Make sure that all the areas that you were looking at are done. Make sure you turn it in all different directions so that you can say, oh my gosh, all the bottom right there was not gray and I needed to do that. You know, so you can see everything. This way you're getting a final perspective, just like the customer would if, say, they were washing this. Obviously it's a hand wash only type of cup, but say they were washing it, they could be doing that. So you want to make sure that they're getting a good quality cup out of you. So here's the gray, all painted from all angles. You can see one spot right down here. I closed off my black on accident in one spot, so easy peasy. You're gonna take this paintbrush, I grabbed the wrong one. You're going to grab the black, you're gonna dot it. You're just gonna redot that black spot. Ta-da, that's simple. So I'm gonna take my brushes, put them in the water. And now, one final thing that I think I'm gonna do, obviously this is totally optional for you. I think I'm gonna take a little bit of black and I'm just going to make a little bit of veining through the cup itself. I'm probably going to use more of a dark brown and not black, so I'm going to mix, and I'm just going to do a little bit of that. So I'm going to use a bushy brush here, and I'm just going to do a little bit of like a dark brown in some areas, just to make it seem like, okay, this is dirty. So if you look right here, you can see where I put it in. So I'm just taking a little bit of brown, and I'm just kind of putting it in just random spots. No rhyme, no reason, just all over, because you want a little bit of depth in here. So I'm actually going to take my melted chocolate on here. I'm going to mix it in with the black. Just to get that dark brown that I'm looking for. And these little trays wash up so easy. And I was actually pleasantly surprised when I opened it up from the dollar store and found out that there was like 3 trays in one package. I thought it was just one tiny little tray, and I was happy with that. And then I opened it, was like, ah, bingo, I hit the jackpot. All right, so this is dark. It's where I want it. I'm just gonna add it in a few places. I might add a little bit of veining where it's like sort of thin coming out in random spots, but you can see where I'm really just adding depth to it. I want to make sure that it looks, you know, old. You don't want it all to be just the same leathery bound book. So I'm just adding it really lightly. I'm not pressing down very hard. I just want a little bit of color change in a few places. Doesn't even have to be very many places. There's a couple of places where I left the paper towel sort of white shining through just to kind of feel like the leathering bound. You know, just try to make it look a little better. So we're gonna just, like I said, add a line here, add a line there. I could use alcohol ink for this, but honestly, I think like the acrylic paints that I've been using is sort of good, and it's good enough for me. So I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna crease it out just a little bit with the darker. We're gonna come into the middle now here, and I'm gonna use this dark brown, and I'm just gonna go around the inside of it to give it a little bit of color. I'm going to be very careful because I'm gonna get it on the gray, which I just did. So I want to, because it's a bush brush, I just want to get it in here, but I should have used a little bit smaller of a brush. Which I may do right now. Just to make a little bit lighter color in here. And then this one is more detailed, so you can take a little bit more time. Go a little bit slower with it. Just make sure that you're covering any of those details that you want just a little darker. I think the shading for that is better to have it a little bit darker. So I'm gonna grab a gray and just cover those two places that I did that on accident. Like I said, you could take a little bit of the brown, you could kind of take over a little bit with like a little bit of lining to make the gray look older. You could use the sponge brush, which is one of these, and you could kind of just over it with the brown, and it would create like older lines. That's okay. Those are kind of cool to do if you want to go that route. Like I said, it is personal preference how you want to do it. It's like I'm just wiping here, there, everywhere, doing just a little bit. Don't forget the bottom, because I mean, come on, people do look at the bottom. I might stick something down there, something special. Not really sure yet what I want to do with that, but it could happen. So I'm going to take the